Welcome to Nerds Amalgamated, a podcast that covers the latest events in science, pop culture, and gaming.
I'm the professor, aspiring game developer, sci-fi aficionado, and completely and undeniably a geek trying to take over the world. I'll be breaking down the news from tech to gaming.
I am the DJ, a humble nerd, a big weeb,
and a watcher from the halls of the multiverse.
Just kidding. Anyways, I'll be breaking down all things comics to movies to anime.
Join us and stay hydrated as we quench you with witty banter, unintentionally hilarious hot takes, and trivia more fun than a night at the pub, courtesy of Nerds Amalgamated. Welcome back to Nerds Amalgamated. This week we're talking about why consoles are getting even more expensive. It's not just because of the tariffs, it's getting more expensive around the world. Marvel's new plan, and the first photograph of an atom.
Ooh, gotta admit that does sound cool though.
Yeah, you're doing the sarcastic sounds, but it's cooler than you think.
Fair.
So will you be getting a new console this year?
After much griping and discussion with a couple of people outside my outside the podcast circle, no, I won't be getting any.
PC gaming all the way.
Yeah, embrace the master race, everybody. Embrace the PC master race.
Although it's not like we're not getting screwed with prices either, just for different reasons.
Yep.
So, up until this generation, usually you'd see a version of the console come out a year or 18 months or 2 years after the console released, and it would be a slim version that was cheaper. And the article points out that that's been true all the way from the early days of Atari in the 70s up to the 2010s. And yeah, that's the Atari got cheaper over time. The 2600 started off with having 6 switches on it and was called a heavy 6. Then they made it lighter, and that was a light 6, which my neighbor happens to have one. I helped him restore it a few years ago.
Yeah. How long did it take?
Not long at all. We just had to replace some capacitors that had dried up. I think it's developing some other issues with its image generation that we might need to get into, though. I don't know. I haven't spoken to him about it for a bit. But then they made the version with only 4 switches. And so that pattern has followed through for almost every console up until today, until the current generation, where instead of getting tweaked and redesigned to be cheaper, they get more expensive.
Oh yeah. Remember the good old PlayStation, and then you got the PlayStation Pro?
Yeah.
Which made no sense.
Comes without a disk drive.
Yeah.
Expensive.
And the funny thing is, when you buy the no disc version of the PlayStation Pro, you're left wondering what the hell, man? Why did I sign up for this?
Yeah, because then the only way to buy games is through the PlayStation Store, so you can't take advantage of any cheap physical games, especially in the later years of a console. The price for physical games starts to come way down because the copies start. So they're learning the mistake that PC gamers made years ago, that you should buy physical where possible because then you can resell it later on. Unfortunately, on both PC and console, that's no longer possible because everything is tied to an account these days.
Yep.
But the article here from Ars Technica points out that one of the big things that would happen in these redesigns is that you could get a cheaper processor after a couple of years because of a thing called Moore's Law. Moore's Law was a statement by a guy who worked at Intel that basically a number of transistors in a chip would double every year, and later he revised it to every 2 years. So it could be assumed that over a particular time period, a chip would become half the size, or you could fit twice as many transistors in a particular area, which effectively doubles the processing power. Not quite doubles, because you've got to have supporting circuit and stuff, but greatly increases the processing power. And that's been true for 40 years, give or take. But the last couple of years, Intel and AMD have really struggled to shrink their processors any further because we're coming up against physical limits of the universe.
Wait, what about quantum computing though? Wouldn't that Isn't that a new? Wouldn't that be a new chapter in the AMD versus Intel war?
No, quantum computers are really a entirely different architecture. They're
Hmm.
not for consumers because
Well,
they
I mean,
require, like, they need to be super cooled to work at all. So you're not going to see a quantum PlayStation in the next. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I highly doubt we'll ever see a quantum PlayStation because the quantum effects that they rely on for a computer are just too specific and specialized, and they require these conditions that are impossible to meet in an average home.
The old if let's say okay, in the halls of the multiverse, okay, let's say if a quantum computer is at home, it becomes a home thing. Okay, imagine a game of Crisis playing on a quantum computer.
Well,
Can it run Crisis?
yeah, I don't know enough about quantum computing, but as I understand it, they're good at different kinds of maths to a traditional silicon, which is why we're looking at things that are theoretically quantum safe for encryption. Basically, the idea behind a quantum computer is that because it's good at these different kinds of maths to a traditional, it can do things like crack passwords super quickly, which would be useful because I came across a cryptocurrency wallet that I have from back in the day when I dabbled in that like 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm currently running a program on my computer to try to crack into it. It's going to take a long time if it ever gets in.
Okay, how long of a time are we saying here?
Well, I'm running it against the RockU 2024 word list and
Mm.
hoping that my password is in there somewhere, which is unlikely because, as far as I'm aware, none of my passwords ended up in RockU 2020. But I have no idea what password I used for this wallet back in the day. So my options are to use a word list, which is a list of passwords that have been stolen people, or to try to brute force it. And on the off chance that my password is in the word list, I can get in there sometime within my lifetime. So at the moment, it's going up and down depending on how busy my computer is. But I'm
Mm.
looking at sometime in October to finish checking every password in the list.
Oh
And
damn.
there might not even be any money in there. But it's a bit of fun for me. I'm studying cybersecurity, so learning how people do these hacks is a bit of fun for me.
Sure.
But anyway, the quantum computers are really good at the types of maths that traditional computers aren't good at.
Mm.
And because of the way encryption works on computers, there's a algorithm that is very hard to reverse. So when you encode data onto a computer using a standard encryption algorithm, it's nearly impossible to take the output and turn it back into the input. But quantum computers could blow that out of the water, but they do it in a different way. So theoretically, we have what is called quantum safe encryption, which should be secure against quantum computers, but we can't be sure until quantum computers become a generally available thing and somebody actually tries to crack it.
I mean, it will take a damn while for that to happen.
Yeah, we're a long way off quantum computers hitting general availability, but we are getting way off topic here.
Yeah. The reason why I'm saying in terms of quantum computing, in terms of in terms of PC stuff, because if I recall, I think they were bringing out some quantum processors from what I recall.
Yeah, but they're very limited. They're early prototypes. For it to be in a useful quantum computer, they need to scale that up by several times.
So what are the other? So what are the factors did they say that that's causing this problem?
So we've got the end of Moore's law, which is getting to the point that diminishing returns of producing new types of chip. So the idea of it was that technology would improve and shrink the size, physically shrink the size of the transistors. But we're getting to transistors that are a few nanometers across, which is really close to the size of the atoms they're made out of. And that starts to be a bit of an issue because it's really hard to actually manufacture that. And we don't have technology to build a computer out of things that are smaller than atoms.
Well, what about I know even though the road between building processors between Intel and AMD is dead. What about other companies? Could they rise up and let's say break the competition?
Not without some sort of massive change in the way we do things. But the reason why consoles got cheaper because the transistors got smaller is that the transistors make smaller chips that are more power efficient and put out less heat. And it depends on the exact manufacturing process, but sometimes the manufacturing process will have a higher yield. Like if you can make a wafer for a computer chip, say it's 10 centimeters across, if you can fit 100 chips in that wafer, then you've got to, sell at a particular price to break even. But if you can fit 200 chips in, then you might be able to drop the price by half. That's assuming that the new manufacturing process doesn't cost excessive amounts of money.
Not to mention, the other problem you're gonna have to deal with is the fact that technology is always improving. So one minute these sort of chipsets will be the next it will be great. The next minute they're obsolete.
Well, yes, but building using obsolete tech can become cheaper as well. The original Nintendo Switch was using a chip that was already a few years old when it came out, the NVIDIA Tegra chip, and I think that's part of why it was so cheap. But the Switch 2 is going to be using more modern chips that aren't as relatively old at launch.
But the Nintendo 2, I mean, when Nintendo Switch 2, I mean, their demand has went skyrocketed as soon as the news was announced.
Yeah, the pre orders for the Switch 2 have been huge.
Yeah.
But that's, I think, partly because the Switch is the only console that everyone has to own. Like, you can go by, if you're a gamer, you can go by having just a PC, just a PlayStation, just an Xbox. These days, most games are cross platform. But the Switch has games that are only available on the Switch.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people will be Team PlayStation or Team Xbox and also own a Switch because they want to play the exclusives.
Okay, I'm curious to ask though, because do you reckon this is even though we're seeing like this is bad news, like console prices are getting expensive, and the chipsets are getting more and more versatile per se. You reckon this is a sign that gaming is becoming more and more popularized in a sense?
No, I think I don't have a source to hand, but looking at sales over the past decade,
Hmm.
there was a huge bump in 2020 because of COVID, and things have fallen back to pre-COVID levels. So I don't think gaming as a whole has become any more popular than it was before COVID,
Yeah.
or we would have seen that continue onwards for the last 5 years. But I think what this article doesn't address is the availability of chips. There are only so many chips that can be made in a foundry in a week, and a lot of them are going to AI.
Oh yeah.
There is so much demand for AI chips at the moment, so they're not producing as many CPUs, and they're also charging more for for AI level use. Like compare the price of the Nvidia 5090. If you can get one at its regular sale price, that's about 2,000 US dollars, I think.
Yeah,
It's going
that's
for more like 4,000 US though. But an Nvidia, I can't remember the number now, 6,000 series Nvidia, I think. Their workstation line, so basically professional graphics cards for people who are making AI and all that. It's called Blackwell. They cost more like 10,000 USD. And that's
and
for roughly a 3 times bump in video RAM. So they're more than 3 times more expensive and have a bit less than, they only have 3 times more. I won't say
and
they're more powerful because they're still running on the same GPU, but they have more VRAM, which is important for modern AI.
and
And go on, DJ.
I was gonna say, yeah, these prices that you just described, Professor, are these before the tariffs or after the tariff, mind you?
Oh, before tariffs, I think. I mean, I saw a video from Jeff Geerling today where he reviewed an ARM-based motherboard, and it's supposed to cost I think he said 210 US dollars. And then they updated his price because of the tariffs to well over $1,000.
Oh Jesus!
Yeah. But there's more profit margin in selling thousands of GPUs to AI companies than there is in selling hundreds of thousands of GPUs to gamers. So that's driving up price as well.
Curiously though, with the use of AI chips and gaming, would you see an like sort of a gaming arms race in a sense with the AI chips and all?
No, they're kind of different fields. A GPU designed for gaming will be able to do a AI training, but not as fast as one designed for AI training. And you'll be significantly hampered because the advantage of having the extra VRAM is that you can fit the entire model on the GPU in the fastest possible memory for that amount of data. If you're looking at using less VRAM, then you have to put it on an SSD or a hard drive. And the disadvantage of that is that you're adding in a ton of latency because instead of just going to the RAM or GPU, you have to go back to the motherboard and then to the device. And it's also slower than VRAM is to read from standard RAM or an SSD.
What do you reckon? With this sort of news that's coming out now, what do you think is? Do you reckon this will affect game developers in relation to manufacturing games? Like, if I were to create a high end game, I have to be mindful of the level of technology I have to work with.
Yeah. So you mentioned Crisis earlier. When
Yeah.
Crisis came out, it was basically impossible to run it at maximum settings. And that's why it became a meme. So it wasn't until a few years later, also, one of the big things was that Crisis assumed that single core performance would keep going up. It didn't. Instead, we settled for multi core CPUs
Oh yeah, the
rather
quad
than
cores and all.
yeah. So the idea was that single core performance would increase much faster than it ended up doing in real life. And so Crysis tried to push the technology and ended up overdoing it in the wrong domain. So I forgot what my point was now.
You were talking about the I was talking about the AI the game developers what the sort of technology they have to deal with, and you were talking about Crisis
Oh
and
yes.
quad core.
Yeah, so anyway, the point I was trying to get at is that we should hopefully see developers targeting more mid range tech. Historically, developers mostly target mid range tech or mid to high end because you
Hmm.
don't want to cut out the low end of the market. You cut out the budget gamers and you're cutting out a big bunch of could buy your game. So
I,
uh, I want to see developers targeting the mid-range stuff rather than the mid to high end and stretching out the lifespan of our hardware a bit
yeah,
because yeah, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, it made sense to upgrade your computer every year, every second year. Then 20 years ago it was, maybe every third year. 10 years ago was when we really started to get bogged down, and it's just not worth upgrading every year. So I'd like to see developers targeting the mid range so we can get more life out of our existing hardware.
and that's now that you mention it, the other thing you have to worry about is the fact that even if you buy like even if you upgrade the stuff, it's not gonna the lifespan of if you let's say if you were to make new chips now, the lifespan of the chips now they're not gonna be like old times, you know,
Do
like
you
your
reckon that modern CPUs will last less time than old ones?
yeah.
That's kind of a valid thought because there's some weird stuff that goes on when you get this small, like electro migration, I think it's called.
Hmm.
Basically, the electrons moving in the wires inside the CPU can knock the atoms of the wire around and basically break the wire. And yeah, so I reckon that uh, these smaller chips will last less time because of things like that. Cosmic rays, the smaller a process node a chip is made with, the smaller the higher the odds of a cosmic ray damaging the chip are. So satellites will use chips that are 10 or 20 years old because they are easier to harden against radiation and less susceptible to it in the first place. But I don't think anything will last as long as the new Marvel strategy.
Ahoy!
Yeah, not my best work.
So, Disney CEO Bob Iger has publicly acknowledged the Marvel Studios' previous strategy of producing a high volume of movies and streaming series led to a decline in quality and audience engagement. He admitted that in their eagerness to fill Disney Plus with content, Marvel lost focus by making too much, which ultimately diluted the brand and led to less impactful releases. To
Which
address this,
silly. Why do they need to fill Disney with content? Disney already has like 100 years of Disney content to put on the streaming service.
yeah, but then again, like, how long does it take to like transfer data from like old hard drives of Disney movies to the new Disney Plus servers and whatnot? Must take a lot of time.
No, you'd only have to do it once. So the way these streaming services work is that they have a copy of every quality level of the movie. So 1080p and 4K and so on. Then when you want to watch a version, then they stream you the particular version that matches the quality you requested. So the longest part of it is actually generating different versions that you might need to cover all of the quality levels you're offering. It's called transcoding. And yeah, it's actually a bit of a subject for debate in the communities I follow, the data hoarder communities, because a lot of people like to make copies of their DVDs and then store them in a Plex or Jellyfin server and basically make their own streaming platform out of DVDs that they've bought.
Yeah.
And we're getting to the point that end devices can be strong enough to transcode the data for their own use rather than having to do it on the server in advance. But it's still more efficient for Disney to do the transcode. Anyway, I've distracted you enough.
Fair. To address this, to continue on, to address this, Iger outlined a new approach. Marvel will now prioritize quality over quantity. No shit, Sherlock. I love
Ow.
saying sorry.
Finally, a good idea from the Marvel team.
So he emphasizes by saying reducing its annual output to 2 or 3 films and about 2 TV series per year instead of the previous 4 films and 4 films and 4 series. The goal is to make each release feel like a major event and restore the studio's reputation for excellence. Wait, it had a reputation? Am I?
Yeah, people liked Marvel until after Endgame.
Yeah. Iger cited Thunderbolts as the first and best example of this new strategy. Although the film opened with a more modest box office compared to earlier Marvel blockbusters, it has received strong critical and audience acclaim with an 88% Rotten Tomatoes score and an A- cinema score. This positive reception is seen as significant turnaround after several poorly reviewed Marvel projects in recent years, such as Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, and The Marvels.
Can you tell me, why does Thunderbolts have an asterisk at the end?
If I recall, I haven't seen the movie. I haven't seen the movie, full disclosure, but from what I've been told, it comes in the ending. Apparently, there's something happened
Oh,
in the
okay.
ending. Hence the whole
I assumed you might know that, like,
the lore.
I assumed you might know the lore, but
Well, in
assumed
the
there's an
comic books,
explanation for
well, in the comic books, it does. They didn't have an asterisk for the Thunderbolts, so it's just an MCU thing.
Okay. I like how they say it's about lesser known heroes compared to Captain America and Thor,
Hmm.
which reminds me that's what they did to begin with. Iron Man wasn't one of their big names when they made Iron Mans.
Yeah,
They started off with some of their like B-list characters and built up their own storyline, which was mostly separate from the comics. And then now there's so much content that it's so overwhelming to get into. which is the same problem the comics have. Like, if I want to read Captain America, I need to know what goes on in 6 other comics. I need to know if I'm reading modern Captain America or old Captain America. I need to know if it's just so many elements.
See, the funny thing with the Thunderbolts is the Thunderbolts in the comics, it's just the Marvel's answer to the Suicide Squad. That's what it is.
I mean, the concept of taking your criminals and forcing them to be heroes has been done so many times.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
saying the comics, these are the Thunderbolts are basically criminals.
Yeah, yeah, they're mostly criminals, yeah.
Okay. From the ads I've seen for Thunderbolts Asterix, there hasn't been any mention of that, but I'm probably not going to go see the movie anyway. What can I
But
say? I've seen like 90% of them.
yeah.
Superheroes don't interest me that much.
Oh, but Dune is also a superhero movie if you think about it though.
No, it's not.
Oh, come on. Paul Atreides, the superhero in the entire movie.
No, he's not a superhero. He's a god. There's a difference.
Okay, that's like saying Thor is a god.
And
And
technically, Paul isn't the god. It's his son. It's a long story. We'll get there in about 5 movies.
so, Thunderbolts also marks a shift in focus to lesser known characters, as you said. Disney hopes that this renewed focus on fewer, higher quality films will reinvigorate the Marvel brand and lead to a box office resurgence reminiscent of the studio's record breaking year in 2019.
Yeah,
So, in
I don't know
summary,
if you can do that.
I don't think that, like, the MCU back in the day, it was a lightning in the bottle moment.
I think also 2019 was a very different time for movies. Like, we're looking at just for the Marvel stuff. They mention here in the article that 2019 was one of Disney's biggest years ever. They earned 11.12 billion globally, with 7 blockbusters earning at least $1 billion.
Yeah.
But the 2019 had Avengers Endgame in it. And were there any other MCU movies that year?
So there was Captain Marvel, the first first Captain Marvel movie. There, and then after Endgame, it was Spider-Man: Far From Home.
Yeah, but Far From Home was a couple of years later, wasn't it?
Oh no, this was a couple of months after.
Okay.
So Endgame came out in the US. So Endgame came out in April. Far From Home came out in July.
Oh, I was thinking of No Way Home.
Ah, yeah.
Because they just want to confuse people. There's too many names with home in it.
I know. It's such a
At
weird
least the
thing.
new one's not called Home. But yeah, I don't think, Endgame had the build up of 11 years of MCU movies.
Yeah.
And I see that their upcoming movies that they hope will keep them going like that are Lilo and Stitch, live action remake, Utopia 2. First Utopia was fantastic, but can they do it again? Fantastic Four, the first steps. There hasn't been a good Fantastic Four movie in. Has there ever?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, the 2000s Fantastic Four movie still
Yeah,
has a value.
yeah, there were 3 or something 2000s Fantastic Four movies.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then, how many times since then? Just
None,
almost
none
3
ever
times.
since. None ever since, because if I recall, there was the Fan Fantastic, which, oh my gosh, that was a terrible movie. Apparently, it was a 2015. It was a 2015 reboot. That was a terrible movie.
So this is just a secondary.
Yeah, this
And
is the second reboot. Yeah.
an Avatar movie. So did Avatar: The Way of Water do the ridiculous amounts of money that the first Avatar did?
I'm guessing so.
I mean, it's who's making it? Spielberg, isn't it?
No, it's Cameron.
Cameron, that's it. I mean, James Cameron's basically a money printer, but I don't know if the third movie in the series is going to money print that hard because the Avatar movies are very forgettable. I don't think they have the specialness to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Even with the current crop of MCU movies that we're seeing now, they're very forgettable. Like, when was the last time, before the Thunderbolts came out, what was the only good what was the good Marvel movie you ever saw after Endgame that you went,
Uh,
yeah, I'm gonna rewatch it now.
I think I wouldn't rewatch it, but I think the only one that I've seen after Endgame is No Way Home.
Yeah.
And that, that was decent. I mean,
Uh,
it's like a multi Doctor story, but Doctor Who did it better.
You're just gonna bash at the MCU because yeah, Doctor Who did it better.
Can I lie? But they've also got Mandalorian and Grogu. I know people love Grogu,
Hmm.
but I remember the second season of Mandalorian didn't get very good reviews compared to the first one. So are people going to want to see that?
Well, I mean, it is sort of the final chapter.
Okay, so they're wrapping up the story of the Mandalorian.
Yeah, yeah, but
Avengers Doomsday.
yep.
I feel like it too soon. Like, I know it's been 6 years. By the time this comes out, it'll have been 7 years since Endgame. But it sort of feels too early to be doing an Avengers movie because it. I haven't been following it the closest. Like I said, I've only seen No Way Home. But as far as I'm aware, they haven't set up a new team well enough to make an ensemble movie. And that was what killed Justice League. There were too many new characters who had to be introduced and not enough movie to do it.
Oh yeah, the pacing was really whack.
And then Toy Story 5, that'll rake in them.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'll accept that. I just don't think, Bob Iger is saying that's a huge thing and it's quite a lineup and as strong as any slate I've seen in a long time, but I don't agree with it. I don't think there's enough movies there to be that sort of massive hit compared to Disney in 2019, where
Although
we.
mind you, like after it's, I think I grew. I think Iger is right in terms of they're going to be learning lessons from this because think about this. Ever since Endgame, there will have been so many. There was so much content. There was so many TV shows. Like remember the Daredevil series that came out. There was also the Moon Knight series.
Yeah, well, it's basically a full-time job to keep up with Marvel TV shows, and Star Wars is getting that way.
Yeah.
So I've looked it up here, and in 2019, in theaters, Disney released Glass, which didn't do that well. Captain Marvel did pretty well. Dumbo, I don't think I've ever heard of that one. So a Dumbo, is this a Dumbo live action remake?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that explains why I never heard about it. Oh yes, it's got Danny DeVito in it. I remember reading about how they cast him as the circus guy or what. Which didn't hear much. A couple of other things I've never heard of. Avengers Endgame, which is like the big one, the biggest Avengers movie ever, the biggest Marvel movie ever. Tolkien, which I assume is a biography.
Yeah, it's a biography of Tolkien, how he did the whole Lord of the Rings movie, Lord of the Rings book.
Yeah. A movie, Student of the Year 2, released a negative reviews. I've never heard of that one.
Me neither.
Aladdin. Remember the Will Smith Aladdin?
No, no, I don't want to think.
So,
I
yeah. Dark Phoenix flopped.
yep,
Toy Story
yep.
4, that was huge. Spider-Man Far From Home, that was pretty good, according to the reviews. Stuber, haven't seen that one. The Lion King remake, mixed reviews. Don't know that one. That one. Ready or Not? I didn't realize Fox Searchlight. Okay, they're owned by Disney.
Yeah,
It's sort of
yeah,
weird. I'm looking at Disney.fandom.com, and I know it's a fandom site, and I can't stand them because of they're a pretty abysmal website. But
yeah.
anyway, it's the first place I could find for this information. Ready or Not is a like thriller movie about a woman who marries into a family and then has them chase her down to kill her.
Oh yeah, I
And
remember that one.
it feels weird to be reading about that movie against the backdrop of The Incredibles and Cinderella.
I mean, mind you, this was as I put up, I put it on the show notes. This is around the time that was around the time when Disney completed the acquisition of 21st Century Fox. So all these movies that you mentioned, some of them were all like Fox merchant Fox series and
Yeah,
movies.
yeah, I see here. Yeah, there was some others like they had Terminator: Dark Fate, JoJo,
Ugh.
movies that you wouldn't think of as being Disney. But anyway, my point is there were a lot of okay. Maybe my point isn't as strong now. I've read all those out because there's a lot of flops there and only a handful of hits.
Yeah.
On the other hand, maybe there's more that I haven't heard of, but all of those movies in the list that was shown there in the article from 2025 and 26 are not things I expect to be big hits.
Yeah,
Like looking at this, we had Captain America: Brave New World, that mixed reviews, Snow White, mixed reviews, The Amateur, mixed reviews, Star Wars re-release, which is probably one of the biggest things they've done this year, if the number of people I've heard about going to see that is anything with it. Thunderbolts, Lilo and Stitch, Elio, Fantastic Four, Freakier Friday, The Roses, Jolly LLB 3, Tron Ares, Predator Badlands, Utopia 2, Ella McKay, Avatar. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. I don't think anything is big enough to really carry them that hard.
yeah. I mean, what's interesting though, the I guess saying this like reducing the number of projects to help minimize financial risk and avoid box office disappointments. I mean, but then he's putting out all this content though.
Yeah, it's not as much content as 2019, though. The
Hmm.
list feels a lot shorter.
Yeah. Do you reckon you reckon shortening the list can help the brand overall or hurt the brand? Because it feels like
Yeah,
sorry.
I think it'll help. Focus on putting out a few quality movies rather than bucket loads of slop.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. But then but at least it's they're not as entertaining as watching atoms on a screen though.
You tried.
uh
Have you ever seen an atom? You know,
no,
trust
I haven't actually.
they make up everything.
Oh yeah.
That's painful. That joke.
Yeah, no.
Did you feel it go over your head, or was it at too high an altitude for that?
It kind of went over my head.
Yeah, but how close? Could you feel it rush through your hair?
Yep, feel it rush through my hair, right? Like static electricity.
Yes, you can't trust atoms because they make up everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's not as
I was
good
gonna
as
say, like, yeah.
so
Boo.
scientists at MIT. Yes, I'd better keep going with the article before people throw tomatoes at me. Scientists at MIT have taken images of atoms. They create a cloud of atoms, then turn on a lattice of light that freezes the atoms in their track, and use lasers to illuminate the atoms so they can take a photo, which is absolutely wild. I had no idea this was even possible. It's like, you remember that photo of the black hole from 2020?
Yeah.
That's how this feels to me. I had no idea it was even possible to take a photo of that. So they've taken photos of bosons and fermions, which are two types of atoms. Bosons bunched up in a quantum phenomena to form a wave, and the fermions paired up in free space, which is part of the mechanism that enables superconductivity. So they can see individual atoms and what they are doing. And for scale, atoms are 1/10 of a nanometer in diameter. So to compare that, that's 1/millionth the thickness of a strand of human hair. And the latest computer chips are built on what's called I think, a 2 nanometer process node. So I was talking about how they're getting up to the point where the transistors are physically too small to be made out of atoms. That's, getting to that point because
Yeah.
they're so small. And on the scale, you can't build a house out of bricks bigger than the house. So previously, they've used techniques like absorption, where they basically shine a laser onto a cloud of atoms and look at its shadow. And Zweerleen says that it's like seeing a cloud in the sky, but not the water molecules that make up the cloud. So this atom-resolved microscopy uses lasers to corral the atoms and basically keep them in place, and then use a laser to illuminate the atoms and fluorescence reveals their positions. So fluorescence is when an atom absorbs a particular frequency of light and emits a different frequency.
Uh,
The tricky part is that because of, I've forgotten the name of the law now, but you can tell where an atom is, but not how fast it's going. Oh yes, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. You can either know where an atom is or how fast it's going, but you can't know both at the same time. So they basically need to create a scenario where the atoms are in one spot to take a photo of them, but then that makes it difficult to see how they interact because you don't know where they're going to go. And Zweerlane says the hardest part was to take a photo without breaking the optical lattice. He says, you can imagine if you took a flamethrower to these atoms, they would not like that.
so they're reactive in a sense.
Yeah, atoms are constantly moving and constantly reacting. Like, you are made up of a cloud of atoms that are all stuck together by different forces. And then when you touch something, another force prevents you from phasing into it and becoming one with the object.
Thank God we haven't gone to that point yet.
Well, if you could turn off that force, you could walk through walls. You'd probably bring part of the wall with you and then die when you came out the other side, but, you know.
So with this technique though, like have there been previous methods that the physicists have used to identify atoms?
Yeah, I mentioned one earlier, the absorption
Hmm.
imagery.
I mean, besides those ones, have there been any others?
Not mentioned in the article and not that I'm aware of. So, what they were observing, bosons and fermions. Photons are an example of a boson, electrons are a type of fermion, and atoms can be either bosons or fermions depending on their spin, which is determined by the number of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Protons have a positive charge, electrons have a negative charge. Electrons have a negative charge, and neutrons have no charge. So they took a cloud of sodium atoms and cooled them down to the point that they became a Bose-Einstein condensate, where all bosons have one and the same quantum state, then took a photo of it and proved a couple of points, which is that bosons bunch together, and this is all based on theoretical physics by Louis de Broglie, which I remember from high school physics. He basically one of the fathers of quantum mechanics, and if you had a particle the size of a tennis ball, you could use its de Broglie wavelength as a type of electron microscope to take images of some very small thing. But there are no particles the size of a tennis ball, and that's probably a good thing.
So with this sort of experimentation, what are the implications we can see free range atoms for quantum mechanics?
Well, it proves a lot of the stuff that theoretical physicists have been saying. So I don't think it's a huge, this changes everything discovery. I think it's a, this proves everything we thought all along discovery. So the physics is basically determined by maths, and then they go and test the physics to see if it's accurate or not. And this proves what they determined mathematically.
So could you see this application in like tech and medicine in the near future?
I don't think in medicine, because medicine is, even though we're looking at chemical interactions, we're still looking at something on a more macro scale than individual atoms. But tech, this has implications for possibly quantum computing, all sorts of quantum mechanics, really.
Oh, maybe nanotech, and possibly nanotech as well.
Yeah, maybe nanotech. Well, we'll take a short break to tell you about our sponsor, Res, and be back with our shoutouts and messed up moments and wacky movie. Again, we're supported by Res. We have a new code. You can get a discount using the code NERDS, NERDS, at DrinkRez, DrinkREZ.com. Res is an energy drink for the long game. Made of traditional herbs and quality extracts, it relieves fatigue and eye strain, supports eye health, supports mental endurance and stamina to give you hit points IRL. And we like to have some before we start recording the podcast. It's a caffeinated beverage which wakes us up and keeps us alert and helps us feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
You make noises.
Thank you.
Well, for our shoutouts this week, we have the 8th of May 2025, Sir David Attenborough's 99th birthday. Sir David Frederick Attenborough was born on the 8th of May 1926 and is best known for writing and presenting the BBC's nature documentaries forming the Life collection. First becoming prominent as host of Zoo Quest in 1954, he's worked in 8 decades, including and worked on Natural World, Wildlife All 1, the Planet Earth franchise, The Blue Planet, and its sequel. He is the only person to have won BAFTA awards in black and white, color, high definition, 3D, and 4K resolution.
Achievement.
Yeah, and his other achievements include dozens of honorary degrees and awards, 3 Emmy Awards for narration, and a bunch of others that would take too long to list here.
Okay, I'm curious to ask, with this level of achievement Attenborough has done, you will have to one has to ask, why hasn't he won a Nobel Peace Prize?
Because Nobel Peace Prizes are for other things.
Understandable, but
They're about
it's
peace.
true, but I mean, he could win in other categories like Bob Dylan. He's a musician, and yeah, he won a Nobel Peace Prize for literature, if I recall.
Well, there's a Nobel Prize for Literature, which is not a Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh, right, sorry. Still, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, I guess he could qualify for the prize in literature.
Although it'd be
I-
interesting, so it'd be interesting with David Attenborough with the narrating with the voice. And now we see Sir David Attenborough coming to the stage to receive his Nobel Award.
He's got a great voice.
Oh yeah, and a great voice, and so many people will replicate it throughout the years.
Yeah, he must have one of the most imitated voices in history.
It's either him or Bob Ross, I reckon.
I think David Attenborough has a bigger reach. And here's an interesting fact about him. In 2011, his home became the key to solving a murder from 1879. A widow was killed by her housekeeper and decapitated. She chopped up the body and fed pieces of it to nearby children. She was arrested when a severed foot was found and convicted and executed for the murders, but the victim's head was never found. It was discovered beneath the grounds of Attenborough's house. His house used to be a pub frequented by the murderer. Can you imagine burying a body in your local pub?
Yeah, how would you get away with the stench while you're getting drunk?
I have no idea.
You're in the middle of the bar, you're drinking, like, hey, what's that horrible stench going on? Ah, must be the beer, or something along those lines.
And David Attenborough is related to Richard Samuel Attenborough, who you might know better as John Hammond from Jurassic Park.
Oh yeah.
And on the 11th of May this year, we passed the 30th anniversary of the late E3. The first E3 Expo was held at the Los Angeles Convention Center, which was where it was held for most of the remaining years. The organizers were unsure how successful it would be, but by the end of the convention, they booked most of the space at the center and saw more than 40,000 attendees. During the 1995 E3, Sega introduced the Sega Saturn, priced at $400 in the money of the time, and Sony introduced the first PlayStation. Sony Computer Entertainment's North American president, Steve Race, came on stage during their event, said $299, and then left the stage to applause.
I gotta find that video now.
Reminds me of when Microsoft announced the Xbox One, and everyone hated it because it had always online and always watching you with the Kinect and all that. Then PlayStation came up and they were like, you can share your games with your friends.
What?
And what was our messed up moment this week, DJ?
Oh, okay. So, you remember the Marvel Ultimate series, right?
I'm aware of it. I don't think I've ever.
So there is an arc called Ultimatum, and this was full of scenes filled with shock and horror, but none were as surprising as the death of Wolverine by the hands of Magneto. But so for those who are for the uninitiated, Wolverine is a character who practically can't die. With one storyline showing him regenerate from a single drop of his own blood. Not only that, but even when Magneto attempted to kill Wolverine within the continuity of Earth 616, all he did was rip the adamantium from his body and spark the next stage of his mutation. But in the Ultimate universe, Wolverine is killed permanently with nothing more than a clawed hand remaining of him. And if you want to see the picture, it's yeah, very very gruesome looking.
Did you say how he killed him? Did I miss that?
He kills him. Magneto kills him permanently with nothing more than a clawed hand remaining with him.
Yes, but how did he kill him?
Well, the picture is better to be seen than me describing it.
Okay, so he basically ripped him apart atom by atom.
Yep. But yeah, this is the most shocking death of Wolverine that we have ever seen, essentially.
You
And
like
that's
doing
the
deaths of Wolverine in this?
what's up?
You like doing deaths of Wolverine in this? Wolverine killed by Magneto, Wolverine killed by Deadpool.
Wolverine killed by Punisher. Not once, but twice. Well, actually, once, but yeah, twice
Who
in the movie.
hasn't killed
But
Wolverine at this point?
I don't know. He's a glutton for punishment, but let's put it that way.
And our wacky movie is Jubilee from 1979. On the 9th of May, Jubilee premiered in Los Angeles. And the plot is that Queen Elizabeth I travels 400 years into the future and discovers London overrun by punks. Queen Elizabeth in the punk apocalypse. And despite being made in the 70s, filming took place in London neighbourhoods which were still recovering from the London Blitz during World War II. And apparently, in this universe, the Rocky Horror Picture Show still exists because the opening speech quotes the song Don't Be It from Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I'm surprised Rocky Horror didn't come out and say, "Hey, you're taking lines from our movie."
Well, Richard O'Brien from the Rocky Horror Picture Show acted in
Yeah.
Vivienne Westwood, who acted in was critical of it, saying that it was boring and completely misinterpreted the punk movement, and created a t-shirt with her opinion on it. The t-shirt is in the permanent collection of the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. And because of the limited budget, Jordan would do her own hair and makeup at home and then take public transport dressed as a punk to wherever the crew was filming.
Imagine the ahs and oohs that she would get from people. Who the hell is this person sitting in the bus?
Yeah, I wonder if anyone ever sat next to her.
Like, this is the newest version of social distancing. Just dress up like a punk.
Well, I've sometimes considered it because I don't like being touched, and punks are covered in spikes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, people would stop touching me then.
I don't know. Can I see you as a punk person? You with a mohawk, a very very long wiry mohawk.
There's nothing
I don't
wiry
know.
about my hair. It's lush and thick.
Was that?
There is nothing wiry about my hair. It is lush and thick.
No, I meant, but mohawks tend to be long and wiry at times.
Anyway, that's all we have for this week. Look after yourself. Stay hydrated with some res. Please support us. And we'll see you next week.
Check us out on Twitch. We're also on social media, Spotify, and YouTube. Stay happy, stay nerdy. See you guys.